This is the dish we're going to do tonight. I call it a pork ragout with onions and German noodles, known as Spätzle. It's a very interesting dish and a very easy dish to do. You braise the pork in chicken stock with a little red tomato paste and thicken the sauce and spread it over the dish. Very, very interesting. We're also tonight continuing our interview with Mr. Robert Levy. He's a restaurant critic of the Boston Globe, and I think you'll find him an extremely interesting man to listen to. Thank you. Welcome to Ed's Place. Tonight we're going to do a pork dish. Again, it's another one of them simple dishes. We're going to use a pork tenderloin, some onions. We braise the pork in some chicken stock, thicken it with a little roux, add some tomato paste, and serve it with German noodles called German Spätzle. I'll also show you how to make that. That's a very simple dish to make. We'll start out by cutting this pork tenderloin. You can use a pork loin boned out. You could use pork chops. Actually, if the bone was on it, it wouldn't make much difference. That would be a personal choice. I happen to like bones, but a lot of people don't. Good idea to heat the pan up if you're going to do any cooking. Heat the pan, put the oil in it. And I'm using olive oil tonight because it just seems to go good with this dish. You could use cooking oil, or you could use just about anything you want. The pan is getting warm. I'm going to add a little oil now. A little or as much as you choose. While the oil's heating up, I'm going to flour this pork now. This is just a mixture of plain flour and salt and pepper. By the way, this is all the salt I'll use in the dish. It's already in this flour, so I'm not much on using salt, as we've talked about this before. The reason we flour this, it helps the meat brown better. Also, when you're making a dish like this, which is simple to a stew or ragout or whatever you want to call it, even though this flour browns on here, it also acts as a thickening agent, helps to thicken the meat. You could do this with lamb. Of course, you could do it with beef. And if you were to do it with lamb, you'd use probably, instead of using a spatula, I'd use like a pasta, like there's an Italian pasta that looks like rice. They call it orzo, I believe. Use that, cook that with a few carrot shavings to give it some color. And if you was going to use beef, you could just serve it with regular noodles, egg noodles. Or if you choose to, you could use, you could serve it with potatoes for all that matters. But it's an easy dish, but it's a very flavorful dish. And of course, it depends on the fact that you're going to use stock as your cooking liquid. And again, I'm a firm believer in homemade. This is all homemade stock here. If you use canned stock, you want to be careful about the salt content, because the dish will be very salty, and you don't want that. They claim they have a low sodium stock out on the market, but every time I go in the supermarket, I never see it, so. But if you can find it, you'd be better off. When you're browning meat, you don't want to crowd the pan too much. That's about a maximum amount you want to get in a pan like that, because if you crowd it too much, the meat doesn't brown. It stews more than anything else. You don't get that brown crust on it that you'd like. This is a winter dish. You'd want to cook, it's not a summer dish, especially if you're cooking pork. But it's, by thickening, I like to thicken the stock a little, the braising stock, and it seems to adhere to the meat better and adheres to the noodles better, gives you a nice flavor. If you choose not to thicken it, you can. You juices will be a lot thinner. The flavor will be there. They'll just be a little thinner. It's going to take a minute or two for that stuff to brown. So while that's browning, I'm going to make the base for the spatula. Again, it's very simple. Basically, what you want is 1 egg, a cup of flour. That is 1 egg per cup of flour. You could use as many eggs as much flour as you want if you got the conditions to mix it together. And milk. Some people use water. I like to use milk and nutmeg. So what I got in here is a liberal 2 cups of flour. Throw in some nutmeg, maybe a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. And then just break 2 eggs right in the middle of it. Meanwhile, watch your meat. Don't let it burn. Right, mix this together. It'll get stiff very, very fast, but don't worry about that. You're going to loosen it all up with some milk or any kind of liquid if you're going to use water. This is a basic, if you've ever made pasta, pasta is nothing but flour and eggs, and some people put a little oil in it, some people don't put any water in it. It depends. But this is a German noodle mixture, but it's a basic pasta mix, except you're using milk. And you're going to make this a little looser than you would normally make pasta. This is somewhere between a bread dough and a pancake batter. I think I hit it right on the nose with this, although I might put a little more milk in there, just a dab more. That's all there is to it. Now I got a special tool for making spatula. You'll see what it is in a minute. But what a lot of people do is they just take a metal pie plate and they poke some 1/4-inch holes in it and put the spatula dough in it and scrape it through the holes. And it works fine, because I did that before I bought this spatula maker. You can buy them in kitchen appliance stores. What I generally do when I'm going to make something like this, I pre-cook the vegetables. Sometimes I cook carrots with this. Other times it's onions. I like onions with pork. Onions and pork seem to go together very well. What I did is I just took some white cooking onions, like you'd normally cook around Christmas time. A lot of people have them Christmas and at Thanksgiving, and blanch them. And when I make the sauce, probably 10 minutes before the dish is done, I'll just add these pre-cooked onions so they'll warm through. You would do the same thing with carrot if you were adding carrot to it, as opposed to cooking the vegetables in the dish. But then again, I suppose if you wanted to cook them in there would be no reason why you couldn't, but I find it works better this way. It gives me a little more control over the dish. This is a special maker here. And what you do is you put the dough or the paste or whatever term you want down in this little carriage here, and this sits over the top of the pot. And you just run it back and forth like that, and it falls through these holes in the boiling water. Cooks immediately. As it falls in, it falls to the bottom of the pan, and within 30 seconds it rises right to the top. When it rises to the top of the pan, it's done. Now, if you weren't serving it with a sauce of some kind, what we do at home, and a lot of people do, is you make spatula like I'm going to show you how it's made. Drain it well, then take some butter and put it in a pan and make noisette butter, or whatever the term you choose. What it is nothing but brown butter. You don't want it black now, you want it nut brown. And then toss the spatula in the nut brown butter, and it's absolutely delicious. And it makes a great accompaniment if you're getting a little tired of potatoes, then make some spatula, and I think you'll enjoy it very much. The Germans use it a lot. The Austrians use it. A lot of times they'll serve it with Wiener Schnitzel in Austria, although usually Wiener Schnitzel is served with a salad, but sometimes they'll serve it with Spätzle. This pork is browning up good. As I said, you could use any kind of pork you wanted. If you were to take the pork chops and cut the heart out of them, cut the meat into pieces and saute it. Saute the bones with it and cook the bones in the stew, or the ragawi, whatever you want to call it. And just before you serve it, take the bones out and put them on my plate, because I like to chew on the bones anyways, but I'm sure other people do. But tenderloins are nice. What's good about a tenderloin is it's very lean. There isn't a lot of fat in the tenderloin, even though it's pork. Believe it or not, it's rather lean meat. So, or a loin, a boned out pork loin would be, rather lean meat. And pork is very rich, so you could get, you could feed a lot of people with it. One of the little secrets about meat is the smaller you cut the pieces, the more people you can feed with the same amount. The bigger the pieces, the less people you can feed. My mother could feed 20 people with a pound, if she chose to. As you probably noticed, this is also a messy way of cooking, but we're cooking, we're not cleaning. Pretty near done here, pretty near done to the point of browning. Turn the water up so that the water's boiling when we go to make the Spätzle. A cold day, a dish like this is really delicious. Lakash's Bakery in Medford makes a whole wheat Italian bread. I don't know if you've ever had it, but it's worth making a trip just to get down there and buy it. They have it on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and you get some of that whole wheat Italian bread, and this dish here with the Spätzle, and there's few people in the world eating better than you that given night. All right, I'm going to take this meat out now, and I'm going to put it on the paper towels just to drain it a little, and I'll dump the fat out of the pan and to glaze the pan with a little white wine, that is. You might want to brown this a little more yourself. I might brown it a little more too, but we're kind of restricted with time, but that's good and brown. There's nothing wrong terribly with that dish, but it could have been a tiny bit browner. We just want to get the majority of the fat out. You're going to leave some in there. Now I'm going to add some white wine to this. If you prefer not to use an alcohol, you can use water. Water will do exactly the same thing. And you want to scrape up the brown goodies in the bottom. You can see the liquid in the pan turning a light brown. That's getting all the goodies off the bottom of the pan. We'll put the meat back in now. I'd say this would serve 4 people rather generously, without any problem at all. It's about a pound and a quarter of meat there, but it's all meat. There's no bone or fat, so you get a lot out of it. All right, this is some of my famous homemade stock. This is chicken stock. Now, you don't want to submerge the meat, but you want to get a generous amount in there, maybe halfway up the sides of the meat, like that. Let that come to a boil. To that, we're going to add a liberal tablespoon of tomato paste. Out of my famous toothpaste tube here. A couple of bay leaves. A little more than a couple. And about a half a teaspoon of thyme. You want to be careful with spices and herbs. Less is better than more. Now that's going to have to cook for probably a half an hour or longer to get to the right consistency. Now when you first start out, you want to put a cover on the pan and turn the heat down to low. But at some point during the cooking, you want to take the cover off because you want to reduce the stock just a tiny bit, not a lot. Because this is stock, so the flavor is already there. You're not trying to grab essence by reducing pan juices or something. But you could reduce it a little. What I'm going to do now is swap burners here, because I need this burner here for the spatula. When that comes to a boil there, I'm going to turn it down to a low heat and put the cover on it. I think. I know I am, because the cover's right in front of me. And it's coming to a boil now. Turn that down to low and a half, number 1. Put the cover on it. Now we've got a pot of boiling water here, and we're going to make the spatula. But before we make the spatula, we're going to take a little break, and we'll be back shortly. And the reason we're off camera is that Mr. Levy doesn't like to be recognized, because if he's recognized, then he can't be impartial in these restaurants.
You talk about Jasper White and Lydia Shire and and I said nobody's perfect. People say to me, your rating goes to 5 stars. How many restaurants have 5 stars? Tell me the 5-star restaurants in Boston. And I say, there aren't any. Yeah. And they say, how could there not be any? Yeah. And I say, well, I'll tell you why. And this, become a 5-star restaurant in my system, if I went there with you and 2 other people 3 times, that's 12 dinners, 4 people 3 times. To get 5 stars, not only would the place have to be beautiful, very clean, very kempt, very interesting looking, not only would all of the attention from the greeting at the door to every bit of service, to every replacement of silver, to every refilling of the cup of water, to dessert service, not only would all of that have to be flawless, peerless, but 12 times this kitchen would have to put out 4 appetizers, 4 salads, 4 entrees, 4 desserts, all different, and all peerless. Well, you can't do it. That's right. You can't do it. I mean, it could happen. I have twice in my 6 years, or my 5.5 years as a critic, done short little pieces in my notes column that runs every other Tuesday called A La Carte, rather than my reviews, which run every week. I have done about half the column devoted to a dining experience I had that I regarded as a 5-star experience. But in each case, it was me and 1 other person, 2 of us, and 1 meal in a great restaurant. But so perfection is very elusive. And sometimes I feel lousy when I've given a fairly high rating. Anything from 3 or up is, now that I've been doing this all this time, usually brings a great crush of business to these restaurants. And if I give a restaurant a 3.5, and then for one reason or another, it falls off in quality with a change of chef or other reasons, it really, I feel heartsick about it sometimes, and I'm bothered by it. So even when I'm doing new restaurants that are open a few months, I try through my experience to get that sort of almost intuitive sense that this is the kind of place that not only is doing it well now, but probably would continue to do it well. And sometimes you get a feeling that you've gone to a restaurant and it was awful good, but you can't believe it, sort of. And very frequently, you go your other visits and it drops off. And you know that you hit them on a especially good night, and you give them credit for that, but you don't give them a rating that would be the same as if you were only judging it by that night.
Well, most people's dining experience, let's face it, is Friday and Saturday nights, and them are the
Right.
two worst nights in a
And
restaurant.
I have to tell you, as you would guess, I almost never go to a restaurant on Saturday for reviewing purposes, just because I think, even, again, it's forgiving them, giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
I think the night that they're most crowded and most pressured and most pressed, they're not doing their best at all. Sometimes on a Saturday, if you go early, and I tell people to do this, I mean, really dine early, and you create a much better evening for yourself.
right.
You digest your food, you could go on to a movie or whatever, but I suggest that people show up when they're vacuuming the room.
Yeah.
And come in there at 6:04 if they are, and get seated first. Don't sit around being nervous you're the only one. There'll be plenty of people there by the time you leave. And often you'll get the very best attention, because a restaurant that is doing normal business will have its largest crew in the kitchen on Saturday night. They'll have their largest supply of food, have the most specials. This is a generalization, but and that staff at 6:15 on a Saturday is twitching to get going.
That's right.
Let's roll,
Yeah,
let's roll. And they'll say, here come a few, they call them covers. Each person who dines in a restaurant is a cover. And they'll say, the first 8 covers are coming in. Let's, whack them out.
right.
And so if you're eating at 6:30 or 6:45 on a Saturday in a pretty good restaurant, you're likely to get very good food. But at about 8:45, there could be great delays and a fall off in the product on the plate. Again, this is a generalization. In certain kinds of restaurants, that wouldn't apply.
My wife and I do that frequently. On
Yeah.
Friday and Saturday evenings, we'll go out, we usually dine between 5:30 and 6 o'clock.
Oh.
You walk in, you sit down, the place is yours.
Yeah,
The
that's
place
right.
is yours. And even from a monetary sense, a lot of these places now have like a 5:30 to 6:30
That's
special rate on a
Oh, yeah.
meal. So it does work out very well.
Well, you know that they say, what is the national bird of Florida, where all the retired people go? The early bird.
We're going to leave you now, but we intend to continue this interview next week. Thank you.
Welcome back. We're going to now start making the space. We saw me make up the dough for it. We'll start actually making it now. We got a pot of boiling water here, which I've salted, and we got my special maker. All I'm going to do is put some of the dough into the little, I call it carriage. You can call it what you want. It rides back and forth, so it's a carriage. You can see the consistency of this. Some people might, if it was a little bit thicker, it wouldn't make a lot of difference, but I wouldn't want it any thinner. By the way, there's another way of making this. In Austria, they have a paddle. It looks like a ping pong paddle, a wooden ping pong paddle. And what the chef does is he puts the dough on it and he snips it off little pieces at a time with the back of a spatula or a French knife or something like that. I just think it's too much work. I think this is much easier and much better. That stuff is falling to the bottom and some of it is already rising to the top. And this is quite a gadget. It makes it so much easier than rubbing it through the holes of a tin pie plate, but you can do it that way. I bought this in one of them kitchen stores. Quite a little gadget. I don't know if you could make this and freeze it. I suppose you could. Actually, I don't see any reason for it. It's so easy to make, and you can make it so quick that I don't know why anybody would even want to bother. Usually by the time I get this carriage empty, it's ready to take out of the pan. What I use is it's a Chinese type thing. Well, that is, I bought it in a Chinese store. But any kind of a ladle or sieve or anything that has holes in it so it'll drain works fine. Now, if I was going to make this and let it set a while, when I took it out of the pan, what I would do is I put it in ice water to stop the cooking immediately and also prevents the spatula from sticking together. But we're going to complete this dish in a rather short period of time. We're not going to bother with that tonight. And as I said, brown butter, and this stuff is heaven. It really goes good with brown butter. All right, we'll get back to this dish here now and see if we can make something out of it. You can notice that it's got a little orange tint to it. That's from the tomato paste. It also gives it a nice little flavor. Now, there's another thing I do. When I make a dish with bay leaves and things in it like that, I leave them in it. And if you get one on your plate, just put it aside. I don't bother picking them out. I don't know, for some reason or other, I think it adds a little color to the dish if the leaf is floating around in it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add the onions to this. We want them to warm up. As I told you before, they're nothing but little white boiled onions. Now, I hope you all know how to peel an onion. When you peel it, the way to do these onions is put a big pot of boiling water on. Throw the onions in there for about a minute and take them out, and they peel much, much easier. And when you do peel them, cut across on the root of the onion, the root end of the onion, and that keeps them from falling apart when you're cooking them. If you've ever seen Julia told me that trick about 15, 20 years ago. What I have here is a mixture of flour and butter. It's called a roux. Now, you can cook this. Some people cook the roux beforehand. Some, other times you don't. Or if you didn't want to use flour and butter, you could actually make a paste out of flour and water. It's a thickening agent. All you want to do is thicken this. And under certain circumstances, you could use, I don't know, some people would use cornstarch, arrowroot, cement, I suppose. I don't know. Anything you want to thicken it, but I think flour and butter is as good as anything. How much you're going to put in there depends upon how much liquid we had. We started out with approximately 2 cups of liquid. So we put a generous tablespoon in there, and we'll see what happens. We're doing all this for the camera. You wouldn't probably do this at home if you're serving your family, but it's good for the camera. Probably going to run out of space before I run out of food here, but as I said, this will feed 4 people rather generously. You could stretch it and feed more if you had to. Little garnish here. Sometimes I think this is just a waste of time, but the pros do it, so Eddie's going to do it. And there you are, is a pork ragout with spatial and white boiled onions and white boiling onions in a nice sauce made basically with chicken stock. Very flavorful, and I think you'll like it very much. Thank you.
Like a delicious recipe I'm going to try at home.
Yeah, it is. It is good. It's interesting,